I'm Alex. This is Code Along with Alex, and let's test in parallel if any or all elements of a collection match a given predicate in Rust. I'm going to start off by creating a new cargo project, and then I'll do a little reading, and then we'll get into coding. So I'm going to give this an obnoxiously long yet descriptive name. Test in parallel if any or all elements of a collection match a given predicate. That's beefy. And then let's change into that directory. All right. So we're going to use rayon again today and demonstrate using rayon any and rayon all methods, which are parallelized counterparts to std_any and std_all from the standard library. So rayon any checks in parallel whether any element of the iterator matches the predicate and returns as soon as one is found. Rayon all checks in parallel whether all elements of the iterator match the predicate and returns as soon as a non-matching element is found. So let's update the cargo.toml for this project with the rayon crate. And we're going to use version 1.6.1 today. We'll just save that file. Open main.rs inside our source subdirectory. And above our main function body, let's add a use statement. Use rayon, prelude, asterisk, and a semicolon. Now we're good to go. Awesome. So I'm going to delete the println macro from our main function body, and we're just going to replace it with what we actually need. So we're going to start off by binding a variable called vec, which is just a vector of integers, and we're going to create it using the vec macro. And importantly, it's going to be mutable. So vec, and then we'll pass in our values. Great. Okay. Now we're going to do some assert statements, which will actually contain the par_iter methods that we described previously, namely par_iter and then any and par_iter all. So let's start out with, I'm going to write assert, and then I'm going to copy paste this a bunch of times to save myself some typing. So we're going to need a bunch of copies. Okay, and then actually that's good for now. We can always add more in a bit. Okay, so start out with, I guess we want to assert that there isn't any n in our vector where n modulo 2 is not equal to 0. So I guess we can do the non-negative version. So start out where vec, which is defined on line 4. Then we'll do par_iter, so parallel iter, and then dot any. So checking any value that satisfies this predicate. And so we're using a closure, and we want to check that any value modulo 2 does not equal 0. And then we're going to negate that all, or the inverse result with the exclamation point. Cool. Now I'm going to copy everything except for the exclamation point on the first assert macro, and then we'll paste it into the second one, and then we'll update this as necessary. All right, so we're going to do vec par_iter, and now we're going to use all. And then we want to check that all elements in our vector are divisible by 2. So previously we wanted to check that none aren't divisible by 2. And now we want to check that all are divisible by 2. Cool. Now let's do a similar copy-paste maneuver. I'm going to copy the first assert statement into the third assert statement. And I forgot to paste or copy the exclamation point. So we want to do vec_iter any. So any element where the element is greater than 8. So we don't need this enclosing parentheses. And then let me replace the modulo symbol with a greater than symbol, and then delete the not equal to 0. Leave a space for good measure, and replace the 2 with an 8. So we want to assert that any element in our vector isn't greater than 8. Okay. Now let's copy the second assert macro content into the fourth assert macro content. And so now we want to check that all elements in the vector are less than or equal to 8. So we don't need the leading exclamation point, but let's replace or remove the enclosing parentheses and the trailing equals 0. And then we can replace the 2 with an 8 and the modulo with a less than or equal to sign. So we want to assert that in parallel, each element in the vector is less than or equal to 8. Now let's save this and run our code. I'm going to go to terminal, do cargo run. I don't expect an output unless something fails. I don't expect any of the conditions to fail or predicates because all elements are divisible by 2 and less than or equal to 8. Beautiful. Okay. We just got some warning about unused stuff, but that's totally chill. All right. Next, let's see what happens if we then mutate vec by adding an element and then doing some more assert statements. So let's do vec.push, and then we'll just add another integer. But notice this time it is not divisible by 2 or less than or equal to 8. So I'm going to copy paste some assert statements. Actually, no, we'll type out one and then we can copy paste from there. So I got the assert macro, the skeleton, so to speak, and then we'll paste it 3 times because we need 4 checks in total after we mutate our vector. So let me now check vec.par iter any. I want to check that any element in the vector, and then using the closure, where element modulo 2 does not equal 0. Okay. So we want to check that any element in our vector is not divisible by 0. I don't think 9 is divisible by 0. Or by 2, I mean. There will be a remainder. All right, so I guess this should be correct because we expect at least one element to satisfy this predicate, namely 9. Okay, that just took me a second to kind of think it through. I'm going to copy paste this again into the assert macro 2 below this vector mutation event. So now we're going to slightly tweak this. We're going to add a leading exclamation point to kind of get the opposite result. So we're going to do vec par iter. We're going to do now all, where the n in the closure, where n modulo 2 equals 0. So I guess I would expect this to fail. Or no, never mind, because it has the false. And so we're checking that all elements are divisible by 2, but not. So we want to assert that not all elements are divisible by 2. Yeah, okay. Now let's copy the assert macro contents from the 5th assert statement to the 7th. Now we're going to again do vec par iter any, n, where n is greater than 8. And then we don't need the trailing not equal to 0. And so this is checking that any element in our vector is greater than 8, which 9 is. Okay, and now finally, let's copy the 6th assert macro content into the 8th. So here we're going to do vec par iter all, and then n, where n is less than or equal to 8. N is less than or equal to 8. And so this would be, without the exclamation point, checking that all elements in the vector are less than or equal to 8, and then with the extra leading exclamation point, that not all elements. Okay. Now let's save this, and then run the code again. Run. Got some errors. That's cool. I think I just have a typo somewhere. Unclosed delimiter. Yeah, where did I? Oh, I see. Okay, in the less than or equal to 8. There we go. Missing a closing parentheses. It's all good. Saved it. Now let's run it again. Building, and we didn't get an output because all our assert statements were true. Great. Now what happens if we just make one certainly false? Actually, go back to 8. Let's assert that any, excuse me, any element is less than 8. So we expect this to be false because 9 is not less than 8. So let's save this and see what happens when an assert statement fails. Ooh, we didn't get an output. Oh, it's an any, so it won't, it's not exclusive. Okay. That's why. Let me modify this assert statement so that it fails. So now we're checking that all elements in the vector are less than or equal to 8, which they are certainly not because 9 is not. Okay, this should fail. And it panicked because it's an error. Cool. Failed. Great. This was a quick little tour of testing in parallel if any or all elements of a collection match a given predicate. We use the Rust crate called Rayon to do parallel computation and had a little bit of fun. So I'm Alex. This has been Code Along with Alex. I hope you got something out of this and hope to see you next time. Bye.